Great. Hello, Jesse, and thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me. Uh, there are several questions I wanted to ask you about your experience of doing masters in criminal justice in crime control with us, and also about your dissertation, which was so impressive. You've done criminology with forensic science with us, gaining a very high first-class degree, and now you've completed a master's in criminal justice and crime control. You're getting your distinction. Congratulations on that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I really enjoyed reading your dissertation, and both your dissertation supervisor, Mike McCahill, and I agreed that this is probably the best dissertation we've ever marked. So tell us a little bit about that dissertation. What was it about? What were the findings, conclusions?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me anyway on this call. But yeah, I looked basically into animal abuse for my postgraduate dissertation, and I looked specifically at sort of a victimology of animal abuse. So I looked at why certain animals who are harmed are considered victims and why others aren't in a given society. And I looked at the United Kingdom, and I saw that in farming, for example, if an animal is harmed, it's much less likely to be considered a victim as opposed to if it was outside of the farming industry. So I started my research based on three main areas, which were animal rights philosophy, criminology, specifically green criminology, and victimology. But through this research, I found that all three areas were lacking in their sort of attempt to answer the research question that I had proposed. And so I combined all three of, synthesized all three of the areas to look at answering this question. So to start with, I looked from a victimological point of view, and I considered Christie's idea of the ideal victim and what it means to be an ideal victim. And Christie only focused on humans, but I applied this to animals that are harmed as well. So what Christie talks about is animals or is humans that have a low social worth in a society are less likely to be ideal victims, and therefore they're less likely to be labeled as victims when they are harmed. So I saw to apply this to the harming of animals and found that in a society like ours, where we assign a low value to animals like sheep and pigs and typical farm animals, if they are harmed, they're less likely to be seen as a victim, as opposed to animals that are assigned a high worth, like dogs and cats, typically ones that are pets here in the UK. And I looked at the example of China and how they farm and subsequently eat dogs, and how us in the West kind of typically have a view of them being sort of backwards, archaic because of this practice, whereas the practices are actually pretty similar to the way that animals are treated here, just different animals. So that made me think, to come to the conclusion that it's down to the worth of an animal in a given society as to whether they are likely to be seen as a victim when harmed. But then doing some further research, I came across a report, a police report of some sheep that had been killed on a farm by a farmer. And the police had said, this was, an evil act, and it was, something that they couldn't stand for, and they charged someone with animal cruelty for that act. And that got me thinking, because sheep are typically an animal I would suggest have a low social worth. They're regularly harmed and slaughtered in factory farms. So that made me think that there must be more to it than just the social worth of an animal. And that made me think about institutionalized harm. And I used studies on prisons, because I think it's the same for humans, where if harm is done in an institutionalized setting like a prison or a factory farm, then it's more likely to be seen as socially acceptable. And the acts that are committed in imprisonment, through imprisonment, like locking people in, essentially cages would not be seen as acceptable if done by individuals, but because it's done by institutions, it is seen as widely acceptable. And the same, I think, can be applied to animals, which is what I did. And because it's in an institutional setting, the people who are carrying out this harm are just ordinary individuals, and these don't fit the kind of stereotype of the ideal offender, as Christy called it. And therefore, because they're not ideal offenders, the victims of harm are unlikely to be ideal victims and therefore aren't labelled as such. And then finally, I looked at the economic reasons why animals are harmed, and I came to the conclusion, using a lot of critical criminology, that in this free market capitalist society that we live in, animals that are harmed in the name of profit or for economic gain are less likely to be seen as victims. And I say this is the same for humans as well with imprisonment. I link literature to do with the economic benefits of imprisonment to that as well. And so I thought, in an institutionalized setting, if there's economic gain, which there often is, then it's more widely seen as acceptable. So my conclusion overall was that there was a multitude of reasons why certain animals subject to harm are seen as victims and others aren't. And basically, if an animal is of a low social worth and is harmed in an institutionalized setting, then it is much less likely to be defined as a victim when harmed than one that isn't. And I say that this shouldn't be surprising, because this is exactly how humans are treated as well. And with the use of imprisonment, which I use, they're assigned low social worth, they're assigned the status of a criminal and are therefore harmed in an institutionalized setting. And this is, perfectly acceptable. So my concluding remarks were suggesting that criminology needs to incorporate animals more into their study, because there is very little research at the moment into animals in criminology, especially peacemaking criminology as a discipline, because if we're going to try and strive for a more peaceful world, I think it's important that we look at all harms that are done, all acceptable harms, and that includes the harming of animals.
And exploring the animal world and what is happening there and seeing the parallels perhaps brings to the surface what is happening in the human kingdom, yeah?
Yes,
enables us to see some things more clearly.
Yes, I think so.
I've marked your undergraduate dissertation. I was your supervisor. I was so lucky to supervise your work into gun control laws, and I marked several other assignments. All of them were of outstanding quality. I just wonder if you have any advice for our students. How do you produce work which is so original, integrates such a wide range of literature so well? How do you do it?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I think the important thing to do is to focus in on this very specific research question, but then to not limit yourself when you're doing your research and reading, especially for a literature-based dissertation. I think it's important to use everything you've learned over the course of your degree, because to make something truly unique and original, it's all just about finding different angles to view a problem from. And it's easier to do that if you're using things that maybe haven't been talked about in that area before. So, for example, I used imprisonment to talk about the harming of animals, which hasn't really been done, and it makes it original. And it's also a way of connecting all the bits of criminology, because I think most bits of criminology are able to be sort of connected together, and that's what makes interesting and unique research, really. And then also, I think one of the most important things when writing essays and dissertations is to be as simple as possible with the use of language, and writing in a very clear and concise manner, and writing for any audience, really, because I think that's the most effective way to write, really.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of doing the MA in criminal justice? What was it like? And you did it during a very interesting time when pandemic started. What did you think about the program? Was it what you expected? Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, well, it was certainly an interesting time there, unprecedented really. But overall, yeah, the MA was different to how I imagined it, to be honest, because I'd say it's very different to undergraduate. Whereas at undergraduate, you do a lot of probably more theoretical modules. At postgraduate, you still do. There's 2 theoretical modules that you do, but it's a lot more skills based and learning skills that are really useful for going into an employment. So I think it's perfect for doing that. And I found it really useful already from applying for jobs and that putting on applications that you've done. You know, all jobs require excellent communication skills and things like that. And so to do a whole module on communication skills is perfect for that. So yeah, as well as, you know, showing criminology theoretically, I think it shows it in the real world and how you can apply criminology to the real world and to the job market really, which is really useful. And talking about the pandemic, I think it was, you know, it was unfortunate that we couldn't have face-to-face lectures, but there's still online lectures and supervisors were always there to support you through your dissertation and that. So I think it was still a good experience despite the pandemic, really.
So what are your future plans? What are your ambitions?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm just kind of looking for more of a job to do short term, because I am thinking of applying for a PhD at some point soon. Because my overall career ambitions are to go into academia or to you become a researcher or a lecturer, and obviously a PhD is an important step for that. And I think the MA has probably helped me develop the skills to be able to go into that field. Of course, you know, we've done the communication skills is obviously vitally important for doing a PhD and for going on to do that sort of career. And then we have hub modules, which contacting other organizations mean that, you know, they're skills that are definitely going to be useful for carrying out research even if I'm not working for a university when in the future, then working for other companies, having to contact other companies. So they're all skills that are useful. And doing the specific research module on this has been really helpful, learning about ethnography and, you know, other types of research that I could use to do my PhD, and of course the dissertation as well, which is sort of essentially like a little mini PhD, which helps to prepare for that as well.
Yeah. Well, good luck with your applications. And I really hope you get a chance to do a PhD with us.
Thank you.
Anything you would like to tell our students, current students, future students?
I guess just enjoy your time at university really, and try your best, because it really is, you know, a great opportunity to be able to do something that you love really in criminology. And yeah, it's a really great time.
Thank you, Jesse, and good luck.
Thank you.